A $400 million skyscraper in Lower Manhattan has been sitting empty and abandoned for 7 years. It was designed for 80 luxury condominiums with unobstructed views of the East River, Lower Manhattan's first residential tower built directly on the waterfront. The developer chose a cheaper foundation method, saved a measly $6 million on construction, and the building has been leaning, unfinished, and buried in litigation ever since. 161 Maiden Lane stands 60 stories above the financial district. 670 feet of reinforced concrete rising over the South Street seaport. The tower topped out in 2018, right on schedule. 80 condominiums were under contract. The glass curtain wall was going up, and then construction stopped, and it has not restarted in 5 years. The building is still there. It is still leaning. There is no plan to fix it, no bank willing to fund a fix, and after more than 24 active lawsuits and more than 1,400 court filings, no resolution in sight. There was also a man named Juan Chonillo, and his story starts here too. Fortis Property Group is a Brooklyn-based real estate developer led by Chief Executive Officer Jonathan Landau. In September of 2013, Fortis purchased the site at 151 to 161 Maiden Lane for $64 million, 11,500 square feet of East River waterfront, the footprint of a surface parking lot on the border of the financial district and the South Street seaport. Lower Manhattan in 2013 was in the middle of a transformation. The September 11th memorial had opened 2 years earlier. The post-attack vacancy rates that had hollowed the neighborhood out were finally declining. Downtown was becoming a residential destination for the first time in its history, and the East River waterfront, which no developer had yet touched for luxury residential construction, was the obvious next frontier. Fortis's vision was deliberate and ambitious. Hill West Architects designed a 60-story glass tower, 670 feet tall, rising from a narrow rectangular lot with direct sight lines to the East River, the Brooklyn Bridge, and the harbor. 80 condominiums, an infinity pool, a spa, a fitness center, a port kosher entrance with valet service, a partnership with Hinckley Yachts, the boat brand associated with David Rockefeller and Martha Stewart, promising 3 fully crewed luxury yachts on permanent standby for building residents. Sales launched in April of 2016. 20% of the units went under contract on the first day. By September of that year, 72 of 98 units were under contract. The anticipated total sellout was $272 million, with the top floor penthouse listed at $18 million. Frederick Eklund, the star of Million Dollar Listing New York, signed a contract for a $4.6 million duplex on floors 46 and 47, and Fortis offered him exclusive marketing rights for the full building. He opened a sales office in London to pursue international buyers. Financing came together in June of 2016, a $90 million construction loan from Bank Leumi USA. The general contractor was Pizzarati, an Italian firm brought on in December of 2015 at a contract value of approximately $80 million. The building was supposed to be ready for residents in early 2018. Juan Chonillo was 44 years old, a carpenter from Ecuador with 5 children. He had been working New York City high-rise construction for more than 10 years. His cousin, Angel Munoz, had built 3 towers alongside him. Munoz told the New York Daily News that Chonillo was trained and certified and that he was always careful. In September 2017, Chonillo was employed by SSC High Rise, a non-union concrete subcontractor hired to pour the upper floors of 161 Maiden Lane. On September 21st, an SSC foreman ordered workers to use a crane to move a scaffold platform horizontally while 5 workers were still standing on it. Moving a loaded platform with workers aboard was a direct violation of the New York City Building Code. The platform snagged on a wall-mounted hook that secured it to the building exterior. Chonillo unhooked his safety harness to try to free the jam. The platform jolted free, and he fell 29 stories. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The Department of Buildings had already issued 10 building code violations to Pizzarati in the preceding 9 months. There had been union protests outside the building with demonstrators objecting to the use of non-union subcontractors. Now there was a dead worker, a months-long shutdown, and a DOB order requiring a dedicated safety compliance officer at the site going forward. Frederick Eklund's $4.6 million duplex on floors 46 and 47 sat in a building that was now a crime scene and a construction stoppage. He had his name and his television reputation publicly attached to 161 Maiden Lane. Within a few years, both he and Juan Chonillo's family would have walked away from it for very different reasons. The foundation decision that caused this building's failure was made in 2014, before a single floor had been poured. The site at 161 Maiden Lane sits on reclaimed land. In the 17th century, Dutch settlers expanded Manhattan's southern tip by depositing fill material into the East River, including gravel, bricks, old ship docks, demolished structures, whatever was available. Below that layer of colonial landfill lies marshland, sandy deposits, and decomposed rock. At this specific site, the bedrock that anchors every surrounding skyscraper sits approximately 155 feet below the surface. In the surrounding financial district, that same bedrock typically runs around 50 feet down. Fortis was planning to build a 60-story, 670-foot tower on ground that required drilling roughly 3 times as deep as neighboring buildings to reach stable footing. In 2014, Fortis hired RA Consultants, a geotechnical engineering firm, to determine what kind of foundation the building would need. RA's initial recommendation was deep piling drilled into bedrock, the same method used by every surrounding skyscraper. RA also offered a second option, jet grout soil improvement. In this technique, high-pressure cement is injected into the soft fill material to harden it, creating a concrete mat foundation that spreads the tower's weight horizontally across the soil rather than transmitting it vertically to bedrock. The technique is cheaper and avoids the complexity of drilling to bedrock at this depth. RA described the method as technically feasible, but documented that the developer should expect approximately 2 inches of differential settlement during construction and an additional inch after the building was occupied and its full weight was in place. Fortis chose the cheaper method. The New York City Department of Buildings received the foundation documents in September of 2014 and approved the plan in October. The building's design compounded the challenge. 161 Maiden Lane has an aspect ratio of 15:1, 60 stories rising from a footprint roughly the width of a tennis court. Super slender towers at this proportion are unusually sensitive to lateral movement. The structural specifications called for tuned liquid dampers in the upper floors, water tanks engineered to slosh in opposition to wind-driven sway and counteract the motion. Those dampers were never installed because construction never reached the point where they could be. What happened next is documented in the court filings. The project's structural engineer anticipated the lien and designed around it. Horizontal offsets were incorporated into the column and shear wall locations on floors 45 through 49, specifically to compensate for the expected tilt in the upper levels. The building was designed with a built-in lien correction. When Fortis brought Pizzarati on as general contractor in December of 2015, none of this was disclosed to them. According to an engineering report filed with New York County Supreme Court as part of Pizzarati's subsequent lawsuit, the details of the foundation system were never provided to the contractor. Pizzarati built 58 floors of a 60-story tower without being told the ground beneath it was engineered to settle unevenly. The building topped out in September of 2018. The same month, Fortis obtained a $66 million mezzanine loan from Mac Real Estate Credit Strategies to cover cost overruns and continue the curtain wall installation. Then in April of 2018, RC Structures, the replacement concrete subcontractor that had taken over after Chonillo's death, surveyed the building and confirmed what the structural plans had accounted for, but had not communicated to anyone building it: a 3-inch northward lean at the base of the structure. The attempted correction became the second disaster. Contractors poured the upper floor concrete slabs deliberately off-center, trying to use the weight of the fresh concrete to pull the building back toward vertical. The building did not straighten. It curved. The structure developed different lean angles at different heights, offset at the base, bowing through the middle floors, and misaligned at the top. In court proceedings that followed, a lawyer described the result as a building shaped like a banana. In March of 2019, Pizzarati filed suit against Fortis in New York County Supreme Court, seeking an injunction and more than $32 million in unpaid costs. The lien had disrupted the curtain wall installation across the building's eastern facade, created misalignment in the elevator shafts, and caused waterproofing failures throughout. That same month, Bank Leumi stopped dispersing from the construction loan at a point Fortis alleged was $30 million short of the committed total. Construction limped forward briefly under a replacement contractor, then stopped for good in July of 2020. Fortis Property Group publicly called the lawsuit patently false from start to finish, and nothing more than simple defamation. The developer's position was that the building had an alignment issue rather than a structural failure, that two internationally respected engineering firms, Arup and WSP, had reviewed the building and certified no safety concerns, and that Pizzarati had accumulated 10 building code violations and fallen more than 260 days behind schedule through its own mismanagement. The complication for Fortis begins with Department of Buildings records. Foundation documents confirmed that in 2014, the developer and its geotechnical consultant chose soil improvement over bedrock piling. The engineering report submitted by Pizzarati's expert to New York County Supreme Court states that the structural engineer incorporated tilt compensations into the upper floor design, and that none of this was disclosed when Pizzarati was hired. When the lien materialized, the on-site response directed by Fortis, the off-center concrete pours, left the building more structurally complicated than before. By late 2023, Fortis had not paid its own legal team. The law firm representing the developer in the Bank Leumi litigation filed a separate lawsuit against Fortis for unpaid fees. Pizzarati argued the foundation was defective before they arrived, that the expected settlement had been deliberately withheld, and that the progressive lien created genuine hazards. Misaligned curtain wall anchors risked window failures at height, and elevator shafts that were no longer plumb risked operational failures in systems carrying people through 60 floors. The complication for Pizzarati is that the firm received documentation of the 3-inch lien in April of 2018 and continued building. Ray Builders' chief executive officer Jacob Mermelstein testified in court in May of 2022 that the original Pizzarati contract had never been financially workable. He said the previous budget never worked. It could not work, and therefore, the budget increased very drastically. A fourth party had financial exposure in the project alongside the developer and its primary lender. MAC Real Estate Credit Strategies, which had provided Fortis with the $66 million mezzanine loan in September 2018, sued Fortis, Harrell Insurance Company, and Valley National Bank in September 2022. Valley National had by then acquired Bank Leumi's United States operations, and with it the original $90 million construction loan. Bank Leumi's position was that Fortis had defaulted by failing to deliver a temporary certificate of occupancy for a single completed unit by May 31, 2020, and that foreclosure was its contractual right. The complication for Bank Leumi is that it stopped funding the loan in March 2019, the same month the lien crisis became public, at a point Fortis alleged was $30 million short of the committed total. Fortis sued Bank Leumi in August 2020. In March 2021, a New York State Supreme Court Commercial Division judge rejected Bank Leumi's motion to dismiss Fortis's counterclaims, finding them sufficient to proceed to discovery. The parties entered mediation, exited mediation, and re-entered mediation twice over the following 2 years without resolution. 3 options for the 161 Maiden Lane have been identified. Complete the building as designed, with the curtain wall system redesigned to fit the structure's actual geometry. Underpin the existing foundation to stabilize or correct the lien, or demolish and rebuild from scratch. As of 2025, none of them has been funded or started. The estimated completion cost exceeds $350 million. For context, the building's entire projected sellout value when it launched in 2016 was $272 million. The repair costs more than the building was ever worth. No lender will issue a construction loan against a leaning skyscraper with more than 24 active lawsuits attached to it. No insurance company will write a policy on the completed structure. In 2023, a buyer agreed to purchase the outstanding debt on the property and then filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on the day the purchase was supposed to close, rather than go through with it. The verdict on the one repair that was actually attempted, the off-center concrete pours, is that it failed and made the situation structurally more complicated. A New York State Supreme Court judge appointed Richard Cohn as receiver to manage the site in May of 2021. Cohn has been managing it since, and his oversight has not resolved the safety issues either. In July of 2022, New York City Fire Department inspectors entered the building and found that the fire suppression standpipe, the system that gives firefighters direct access to water supply on every floor of a high-rise, had been non-functional for more than a year. A person who had broken into the structure had turned on the standpipe motor to generate heat, which burned out the motor and disabled the system. Without a working standpipe, a fire on the upper floors of a 60-story partially enclosed concrete structure would be extremely difficult to fight. Cohn told the city NYC that the fire watch employees contractually required to monitor the site had also stopped showing up. By February of 2021, 74 of 80 buyers had walked away from their contracts and the deposits behind them. Frederick Eklund's $4.6 million duplex on floors 46 and 47 has never had a resident. In 2023, graffiti artists accessed the upper floors and spray-painted sections of the facade. The New Yorker reported the building had no active security presence. As of November 2025, New York YIMBY included 161 Maiden Lane in its annual Thanksgiving survey of the city's most persistently stalled construction projects for the third consecutive year. In July of 2018, SSC High Rise pleaded guilty to second-degree manslaughter for causing Juan Chonillo's death. Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance announced the conviction with a public statement. The maximum corporate fine permitted under New York state law for causing a construction worker's death was $10,000. That is what SSC High Rise paid for Juan Chonillo's life. Vance said it plainly at the announcement. It is unthinkable that after a preventable tragedy like the death of Chonillo, a father of 5, the company faces a maximum penalty of just $10,000. This is pennies on the dollar compared to the potential profits on a high-rise construction job in a booming real estate market. The same investigation found that SSC High Rise had stolen $517,000 in wages from more than 50 of its own workers over 6 years, and had hidden nearly $2 million in payroll to reduce its insurance premiums. The company's total restitution payment across all charges was $842,000. SSC High Rise paid its workers more in back wages than it paid for the death of one of them. Juan Chonillo's 5 children in Ecuador lost their father on September 21, 2017. No individual has ever been criminally charged in connection with his death at 161 Maiden Lane. The building he died constructing is still standing, still leaning, and still empty. No one currently involved in the litigation over it has any plan to change that. If you want to follow what happens next to this building and to the others like it, subscribe. There are more projects, more decisions, and more $10,000 fines waiting. This is Misbuilt.